Greetings and welcome to another edition of the Ad Astra Kansas Money Talks podcast. I'm Joe Blubaugh, joined as always by Mark Johnson, and joined this week by Bob Schwartz, who was on vacation the last time we did one of these. So, Bob, great to have you back. Thanks for joining us. We are hoping you're watching us on YouTube, and we hope you'll give us a thumbs up and you'll subscribe. And if you'd like to learn a little bit more about the work that these two gentlemen do, go to bobschwartzfinancial.com. They have offices in Victoria, Kansas, as well as Silver Lake, Kansas, and these guys are great to work with. So hopefully you'll learn a little bit today from today's podcast topic, and maybe look these guys up if you decide you need a little help yourself with your personal finances. So a lot of times if you watch a lot of podcasts, they really focus on people with a lot of money, but it's not. Most people are self-made, and if they get to that $1 million, most people did not get that from their parents. They didn't get that from a high-income salary. They got it from working hard and investing that money smartly, and we're going to talk about that today. In Kansas, the average Kansan makes between $55,000 and $60,000 a year. We want to know, and we're going to talk about how somebody making $60,000 a year can become a millionaire within their working life. So we're going to take a little bit of time to talk about that. It is possible, and in fact, it's even probable if you can follow a few steps along. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. So Mark, tell us a little bit about the math of millionaires on $60,000 a year.
Yeah. First of all, the first thing I want to say is, coming from an education background, when I was reading the book, why am I blanking? Millionaire.
Millionaire Next Door?
Yeah, The Millionaire Next Door, sorry. When I was reading The Millionaire Next Door, I was pretty shocked to see that the third most millionaires, the grouping of occupation, was teachers. And so when I'm doing this is always really interesting to me, because I'm like, I probably wouldn't have expected that coming from the teaching world. But then reading about some of the things that you need to do, it kind of makes sense. So the math behind that is, if you get, let's say, from the age of 25 to 65, and this, again, we can't ever know the return on our investments. Mm-hmm. That is an unknown for the most part. There's no one can guarantee you a certain thing. But if we take it and just go at a pretty safe 7% from 20, let's say you get a 7% return on your money from the age of 25 to 65, and you're able to save $500 a month in investments, you'll have $1.2 million by the time you're 65 and ready to retire. $500 a month at the beginning sounds like a lot. I want to make sure that's clear for a lot of people. They're like, that's a lot of money to, save each month. But, the math is okay as long as we can get to that average of $500 a month. Yeah. And
Bob, when we were talking a little bit before we started the program, and we talked about what our topic was, you said, so we're talking about teachers. And because, and I know that you in your career have worked a lot with ag producers, but also a lot of teachers. So
right.
You've got firsthand experience with this.
Right. And what Mark said about they're the third group of successful millionaires and of the professions. And let me tell you why. My perception, why. They listen. Teachers listen. And I've told this story on podcasts, and I've told it on the radio, and I can't tell you how many teachers I had start at $30 a month, and today they're millionaires. Now they increased that $30 a month, but they started out very, very low, very, very small, and kept increasing. And see, if you go back to when a 65-year-old teacher today was 25, they were only making $6,000 a year, So their incomes have gone up considerably, and I couldn't agree more. And I'm so glad we're talking about this, because this is something that needs to be addressed not only in Kansas but across the country.
Yeah, and Mark, you hit on something, and it's something that I've always personally believed in, is getting started early.
Yeah.
So 25, hopefully they could even start a little bit earlier when they start their career, but 25 is a good number to, if you can get that money in the market, even if it's not the full amount that you could save,
Yep.
if you can start then, that's kind of important, isn't it? Getting it started and let that compound interest do its thing.
Yeah, compound interest is magic, right? It's kind of what everyone talks about, this magic of compound interest, but it's also the psychology of saving that $50 one year, going to 100 the next, 150 the next, seeing your money compound, and that is just helps as you get older and older. You've created this habit, you've created this mindset that in a lot of ways, for a lot of people, that is the hardest part, the actually getting started or actually getting in the mindset of saving money. So many people think like, oh, I make 50 grand or whatever a year, I can't ever save money, I don't have any extra room, I can't invest. And that's kind of what, why we're showing this is like, you can save a lot of money with good strategy, with a plan.
And not suffer from it.
Yeah.
And not suffer.
And I think that there's a key that you hit on there. It's like you start the process and you put some money away, and then as you start to get raises throughout your career, and when we talked about this, we were estimating about a 3%, or we figured in a 3% raise or cost of living adjustment each year to that $60,000 a year salary. But it's important that people start early, not only because of the time in the market, but because it starts that
Habit.
Correct, exactly. And then when you start to get those raises, there's maybe the thought of, I'm going to pay myself first.
Yep.
And maybe up my investment instead of going out and buying that new car.
And instead of having a deferred savings account, have an investment account that you're not gonna touch, no matter what happens.
Yeah, that if you are able, you get a 3%, that 3% raise every year. If you earmark 15% of that, 15% of that income, and contribute that to your growth, your investments, that could lead up to another extra $1.5 to $2 million. That's in retirement.
Yeah, and
that is very significant.
It really, to say the least. And we'll sidetrack here just a little bit if you guys don't mind. But me, I'm in my 50s. That $1 million was the okay. If you can get to $1 million, you're a millionaire. You've made it. That's the American dream. I would still, obviously $1 million is still a lot of money. But $1 million is not quite what it used to be.
Not like it used to be.
And for sure, $1 million is a great first goal, but that is not financial freedom in retirement, especially if retirement's still 20 or 30 years away. Yeah. So,
more and more we're seeing these, with the rise of the 401k, the Roth 401k, how companies use incentive, the matching incentive for so many people. We're seeing people in their late 30s, early 40s have millions of dollars in their 401k, and that's becoming a norm almost. Not norm, but
not as uncommon as it used to be.
Becoming more normal and normal.
It's not gee whiz.
Yeah.
But it's needed though, because very few people have a pension nowadays.
Yeah.
So.
It's 80% when I got out of college, 15% today, and of the private sector, of course. The government, military still have pensions.
So one of the things that we talked about last week when it was just you and I was talking about the power of automating some of these. Does that also play a role here?
Oh yeah, for sure. Automation is one of the best ways. Let's say you're a teacher. I mean, there's lots of ways that you can, 457, 403B, whatever it is, where you can automate that process where you're never even having to make the decision to put the money away. Even though, for example, we think it's pretty easy to set up hey, I get a paycheck. I'm going to have whoever pull that money right into my Roth IRA, fund my Roth IRA every year. You can get that all set up. But again, psychology of it, get it going, make it not an action you have to take. Make it no decision. Make it just happen every month.
I'm going to guess most people under 40 today don't write checks.
Yeah, no way. Yeah.
Right, for what? Yeah, they pay their utility bills, they pay everything
Everything's online.
online.
Yeah.
And, nowadays, just 30 years ago, people wanted to add money to their account. We either had to stop by and pick it up, or they had to bring it by. And of course, nowadays it's they call up, but it's much better if they'll set it up and just say, we want to automatically have X pulled per month, and you make that a priority. And then once, it's like a 2-year magic trick, because people will want to grab it. They'll have some emergency. We've all been there. I apologize. We've all been there, and during that first 2 years when there's not a lot in there, we'll get that call. I need to pull that $1,500 out or that $3,000 out. And you don't want that to happen, because eventually that money's going to get large enough that you see the value of what you've been doing, and you can go, wow, this is so important, and I'm going to keep doing it. But that first 2 years, we have to talk a lot of people off the ledge.
Yes, because life happens.
Yeah.
To everybody.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
We all have. I have just as many financial emergencies today as I had when I was 25 having my first child. It's just that you realize, okay, we can handle that. We can handle that. We can go through that maze. We don't need to blow everything up to take care of the transmission in the car.
Yeah, absolutely.
We can figure this out.
So, Mark, let me ask a question. Could automation, though, backfire or kind of be a negative? And sometimes, let's say that somebody's got an automatic withdrawal set up out of their paycheck. Maybe they get a 3% match or 100% match if they put in 3%, and they're just automatically taking that 3% out. Then they get a significant raise, and instead of maybe the lifestyle creep, they just leave it at 3%, and they've got all this extra money. At some point, you want to revisit that, don't you? Because if you start getting some of those raises, you might want to put a little bit more away.
I think looking at everything, personally, I like to look at everything every quarter and, make sure I'm in line. Annually is a great goal for most people, probably, is to, hey, am I still meeting my goals? Is there a way to accelerate my goals? Should I be setting new goals based off my new salary? And so one way to think about it, too, is like, if you're getting a significant raise every year, or a little bit of a raise every year, keep living on your base salary that you've created your budget for, and use those raises as investment or
at least opportunities.
Yeah, opportunities where you can make more money, savings, emergency fund, whatever that is. Yeah.
So we've talked about how important it is to start early, but the reality is a lot of people don't.
Yeah.
I was one of those people. I did not start early. Bob, what's some good advice for people that maybe are getting a little bit later start than a 25-year-old, maybe say 35-year-old?
Yeah, it's absolutely not too late. And but my comment to them would be we've got to be very disciplined here, and we might need to start out at a little healthier rate than. I think the key thing at 35, 45, 25 is start out where you can handle it, and you can handle it every month, and it can become a disciplined habit for you. And then we'll help you go up. We'll help you. We talk to our clients every year that are in the accumulation phase about, did you get an increase in pay this year? Let's increase you $10 a month or $50 a month or $100 a month. The key thing is getting started. Don't set and go, I'm going to wait till I have $50,000 to hand you before I do anything, because that's not going to happen. You're not going to wake up one day and go, I got 50 grand. So that's how I would say at 35 or 40, that's not going to be it's not too late, but you need to get on the ship and start. Mm-hmm. You need to get in the boat and row.
There's a reason there's catch-up provisions for IRAs, so you need to start taking advantage of those. I mean, the reason those are there is because there's a lot of people that don't get on the boat early enough.
So for those that aren't familiar with what a catch-up contribution, could you maybe define that real quick?
So instead of the $7,000, you get to contribute more.
But you have to be a certain age, correct?
Yes, over 50. Yeah.
Okay.
So you get to contribute more than the average, the normal amount you get to put in, that $7,000 a month. I think it's 10 right now. I think it's $3,000 over. Does that sound right, Bob?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So people sitting there watching, this has happened many times in my career. I've visited with people from 60 to 75 that had not done anything. Maybe have a tremendous net worth, but no money in retirement, no money where they can grab it if there's a long-term care event or, all sorts of things. It's not too late. Matter of fact, just sent a note with a monthly statement this month because a client that is a year older than me, they just crossed over $500,000. And when they started with me, he was over 60. And they had not saved up anything for retirement, anything for the future. And so we have definitely worked with people in their 60s and 70s. The thing is you need to hit it pretty hard with some healthy contributions. But I want to point that out that 35, 45, we've even worked with people from 60 to 70.
The one thing I would say just in general here is there's going to be a lot of people, this goal of $1 million, which again, we've talked about, maybe that bar is being raised all the time, obviously, but there's no magic, there's no magic bullet, no magic potion that gets you that. If you're 25 or you're 65, that's not an overnight thing.
You're not going to jump on Robinhood and become a millionaire tomorrow. It's nice to think about.
You're not going to watch a YouTube video about day trading or options trading and decide, and the next day, that's really not safe. So
it's so boring to make money.
Yep.
It is. It is.
Although I will say, until you start to see that really take off, then it becomes
an addiction, almost an addiction.
It does.
But the key thing is that we can watch videos all day of guys that are just billionaires like Warren Buffett, who I love him to death. He's fantastic. He didn't make his money overnight. Guy started investing when he was 8. He's brilliant, and he will always tell you systematically putting away money over a long period of time builds wealth.
99% of his net worth was built over his ages 70 or something like that. Which is still an absolute absurd amount of money. But and as I tell clients when I write them notes when they go over their first million with us, I always write them a note saying the second one's a lot faster, because it is. It's building up that first one. But Joe, you're so right. I think Mark's age group's going to need 3 to 4 million. I think Carter, our summer intern, is going to need 5 to 6. And as crazy as that sounds, when I was 26 years old and I started, if we went into someone's home or they came into our office and they had $50,000 in CDs and a pension, they had it made.
Yeah.
There was no need for CFPs. Everybody was hawking something. You were trying to talk somebody into, here's what my industry did back then. You're trying to sell life insurance or mutual funds, and get a commission on them, because nobody understood what they were. And you ran into these people who had $50,000 in a pension. They just needed to look for a place to put some money. Yeah. That has switched today to being guidance, because we got rid of pensions and because we unleashed 401ks on a population that knew nothing about the stock market, and then had talking heads on TV going, the market went down 1.5% today. Oh my God, the sky's falling. And so our industry went from being a sales industry to being a service industry, and serving people to help them build wealth through sound money management ideas. And we're not going to make $1 million overnight. by
Yep.
being in XYZ, the new hot AI stock.
Right. And that's always such great advice. But one thing that is key to making money and wealth, not making money, but preserving your wealth and saving towards retirement, you could have great investments, but if you're spending more than your salary, or if your lifestyle is more than what your salary can handle, it's going to be really hard to do that. So that's the other key component of this, is saving over here, but also watching what you're spending on the other side of that.
The Millionaire Next Door, the book they do a great job, like giving lifestyle, like the millionaire that next door that doesn't have the huge house or the nicest car or whatever. They do a really good job of showing those habits of these self-made millionaires that a lot of them come down to. They have nice homes. They don't have the nicest home usually.
Right.
They have
Right.
they keep care of their things, or take care of their things. They have a nice used car, not a brand new car.
If I remember correctly, isn't the average age of the car that a millionaire drives 10 years old?
It was it was between 5 and 10 years old. Yeah.
Yeah. So absolutely. And in Kansas, we're in some ways lucky in the fact that our cost of living is lower here.
Yep.
A house that is in Kansas would be exponentially more expensive if it were in California per se.
Yep.
But it's still really, it's all relative. It's you living within your means, and obviously the less expenses you have, the more money you can put towards investing to your future.
Story time.
All right, we love story time.
Back when I was first starting the industry, and it's no secret, I started out in the life insurance industry. And when we'd go to someone's home to visit with them, this is, long time ago, back when people used to do that. And if we pulled up to a house in Johnson County that had a boat, a really nice pickup, brand new car, Gene, the gentleman that trained me, would go, "There's not going to be anything here." And I'm like, "God, no, this is a great house, and they got all this stuff." And he'd go, "No, they're making too many payments." And then, maybe 10 days later, we'd pull up at a house, and they had an old beater car and then one nice car sitting there, and the house needed painting, and he'd go, "Now this is going to be a good house." And I'd sit and think, "Well, there's no way." And that'd be a good house because the people were savers. And it was true back then. It's still true today. Mark and I will run into folks that are putting less money into their 401k than what their car payments are. Yeah, and that happens a lot. Think about it. It's just they'll be spending $1,200 a month on car payments and putting $600 a month in their 401k. Should be reverse that. Or it should be zero for car payments.
Especially with the car, because it is such a declining asset. I mean, you can't think of a car as an investment. You just can't.
No.
And yes, everybody has their priorities, but if your priority is to get to that $1 million or beyond for retirement savings, having a massive car payment is probably the number one enemy of that.
I think that our priority here, and who's the guy that's on every night on WWW every evening when the Royals on?
The money moves
Yeah,
guy? I don't remember his name.
Oh, he's so big. He's huge.
Dave Ramsey?
Dave Ramsey.
Oh.
Yeah, so not to get Dave Ramsey here, but if you want to have a life where you and your spouse aren't arguing about your finances, and if you want to have a life that you don't have to worry about 3 months from now because you've got some savings and you've done some investing, that you need to get going and get some professional help, because you can go read and watch. I've watched so many people. You can go hire online and have your money managed. Yeah. Well, how's that going to work when you get scared and want to get out? You're going to get on and automatically get out.
Yep.
And then you're going to come in and talk to a professional and go, "Well, we got out in 08 at the bottom." "Well, have you gotten back in?" No. We just didn't know when to get back in. Right. And you missed out.
All right.
And-
And honestly, just the last couple of months is just a perfect example of that, because 2 months ago, the stock market was in a dive, and it looked like, I mean, from my uneducated standpoint, and I'm sure you had some clients that were concerned, you didn't know where that dive was going to stop. And I'm going to guess there were thousands and thousands of people across the country, maybe in the millions, that pulled back.
Yeah.
How many
And-
calls did we get, Bob? Yeah, I was going to say maybe. I don't even know, but like those
I
were
got-
really. I was going to say really none. With
None in terms of there's 2 clients that if we have a market correction to 3%, they will call. They've done that for 30 years, and you know, it's like the market scaring us 3 months ago. You know, I can't guarantee anything about the market, but we're going to get scared again. I mean, that's the nature of the market.
But that's part of our job, is to educate clients on making sure that we understand the market, the volatility of the market, and the price we pay for our investment gains.
And you guys had a plan. You already had planned in these kind of things that happen in the market already.
We preach constantly to our clients in our annual letter, our semi-annual letter, about the fact that we're long-term equity investors, and we're not going to get out. We ride the wave, and like Mark was talking earlier, you can't talk about what the market's going to do because we don't know. But the longer period that we can talk, the narrower the rates of return come, and they do become more predictable.
Right.
Where we can't predict is if somebody calls up. Here's a call we just got. I just sold my house. I've got around $100,000 in equity, and we're building our new one and won't need that $100,000 for about 6-7 months. You know, you got any ideas? Yeah, let's put it in a 4.25% Treasury bill and set it where we know guaranteed when you're ready for that money, we've made you money. We're not going to get in the stock market because we have no idea. That $100,000 could be worth 50.
Right.
You know, in 9 months. So understand that over longer periods of time, the market becomes very predictable. Now, will it always be that way for the next 100 years? I don't know. But if it does half what it did the last 100 years, it'll still beat the pants off of anything else.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great point. We're going to wrap this episode up, but bottom line is, it doesn't really matter your income. I mean, long term it makes a difference, but the nuts and bolts of it are the same. Invest early, stay consistent, stay disciplined, and let the stock market and compound interest do its thing. And you will definitely have some money setting aside ready for you when it comes time for retirement.
Take advantage of our low cost of living state that has all sorts of, good options in retirement. If you have that ability to be in Capers 457. Most people have access to an HSA. Take advantage of those things here in Kansas.
Absolutely. Any final points there, Bob?
No, you guys did a great job this week.
All right. Well, we'll wrap up this episode. Once again, if you're watching us on YouTube, we'd love it if you'd subscribe, give us a thumbs up. Do the same wherever you're catching this podcast. And until we get to our next episode, thanks for watching, and we hope you have a great day.
Thanks.